The first surprise is not shaped like a machine at all. It is a lump the color of damp olive bark, jagged, heavy, more like a reef fragment than an artifact. Imagine gloved fingers lifting it from a crate wet with sea brine, a stuttering light bulb over a museum bench, and then, under a film of salt and centuries, teeth. Not the teeth of a jaw, but the purposeful bite of bronze cut into regular ridges. What sort of mind hides a sky inside a box of gears, then lets the sea keep it for 2,000 years? If you're curious where this trail leads and you want more deep investigations like this, subscribe to The Secret Box. Hold that first image, a corroded slice of someone's intention. The story begins on a shipwreck off a small Greek island where divers searching for treasure found a cargo that looked like a submerged sculpture garden. Bronze limbs, marble torsos, things a museum can love at a glance. But in the crates came humbler shapes, split and fused by the ocean. And those pieces would turn out to be the most complicated of all. At first, they seemed like nothing, just oxidized junk clinging to wood. Then, a flake came away. A circle emerged, a circle with teeth, the kind of detail that refuses to be random. This moment unsettles people because it breaks a naive timeline. We're comfortable with gradual ladders. Simple tools become complex ones, century by century, step by measured step. A precise gear train from deep antiquity doesn't feel like a step. It feels like a cliff edge. Historians and engineers look at the fragments, do the arithmetic, and arrive at the same unsettling whisper. Whoever made this could think in cycles, ratios, and tolerances that many believed belonged to a later age. So, the question is not only, what is it, but how did such knowledge appear, and why didn't it leave a trail of cousins? Let's walk through what the thing actually does, in plain words. Think of the sky as a dance floor where the sun and moon perform repeating steps. If you can count those steps, you can predict where they'll be and when certain alignments happen, new moons, full moons, and the rare moments when the sun, moon, and earth line up just so, and the day turns strange. The device encodes those counts into wheels. Each wheel has teeth, 2 wheels that mesh, transfer motion so that one turn here becomes a fraction of a turn there. Choose the fractions carefully, and you can make a pointer go around in sync with a cycle in the sky. There are several cycles that matter. One is roughly 19 years, after which the phases of the moon line up again with the same dates on a solar calendar. That's called a metonic cycle. There's a longer one made of 4 metonics called calippic, which refines the count. There's a cycle of eclipses about every 18 years, and change, called saros. If you put those relationships into gear ratios and lay them out on dials, you can predict when the sky will repeat its tricks. That matters to farmers timing harvests, priests planning festivals, navigators keeping a reliable calendar far from home, anyone whose life rests on when as much as what. Picture then, not a single magical cog, but a chorus of them. Each tooth is a vote. Each rotation is an argument well made. You turn a crank at one side, and pointers on faces move to show where you are in the cycle of sun and moon, which month you're in by an ancient calendar, whether an eclipse season is near. The magic is not supernatural. It is the magic of counted steps, the quiet miracle of ratios captured in metal. Step closer. The fragments show more than circles. They show inscriptions, thin, neat letters incised in bronze plates, as if someone once wanted this machine to explain itself. The letters are not decoration. They tell you what the dials are for, what the scales mean, where to read the month, where to read the node of the moon. In some places, the lettering is tight, like the cramped margin notes of a careful teacher. In others, more spacious, like a label. Across the pieces, you can track a mind trying to leave instructions to future hands, how to set, how to read, how to interpret the signs. You can also see craft. Bronze is unforgiving if you cut it wrong. The teeth must mesh without binding and without slop, the kind of fit that implies practice, jigs, a feel for filing and burnishing. There are tool marks that speak the language of trained hands. Regular strokes, edges dressed to a consistent angle, peened rivets set with confidence. This was not a one-off from a tinkerer's shed. It looks like the product of a workshop that knew what precise meant, and who had the patience to make precise happen. There is a special puzzle inside the puzzle. The The moon does not move at a perfectly constant speed across the sky. To a naked eye observer who keeps careful notes, the moon sometimes seems a bit ahead of schedule, sometimes a bit behind. Ancient astronomers described this as an anomaly. The cleverness here is that a set of gears can mimic that uneven tempo. Imagine attaching one wheel to another, not quite at the center, with a pin sliding in a slot. As the driving wheel turns, the follower's speed subtly accelerates and decelerates. If you choose the geometry right, the pointer that represents the moon will run a little fast here, a little slow there, and on average come out right. A mechanical imitation of an irregular sky, conceived without calculus, implemented with metal. Hold that design choice in your mind for a moment. It says something about its makers. They were not content with good enough, if closer to the truth could be built. They noticed a small mismatch between a simple model and the world. They found a way to correct it with parts you could hold in your hand. That is not mysticism. That is a worldview, the belief that nature has patterns and that patient minds can tame them. The inscriptions read like torn pages from a manual. You don't get the whole text, you get the corners. A few lines tell you about months, and a few about venues where games were held in particular years, which hints at calendars tied to civic life. Another patch describes eclipses with letters that map to directions and magnitudes, like shorthand for what sort of darkening to expect and where. If you think of the device as a box that could be set to a date, then read like a calendar, then you can imagine an owner aligning it for the year, cranking through the months, and noting when festival cycles and eclipse seasons coincide. It becomes a planning tool, a teaching piece, a conversation engine. Not everyone agrees on every pointer and every dial. The fragments are stubborn. They break at awkward places. They fuse where we wish they would separate cleanly. Scholars have built different reconstructions that fit the same remains, like telling two stories from the same set of footprints. In one, certain planetary motions might be included. In another, only sun and moon with eclipses. In a third, an emphasis on calendars and cycles of games. The debate is not a failing. It is the scientific method doing what it does, holding multiple models up to the light and asking which one says the most with the least strain on the evidence. So, where would such a thing be made? Imagine a port city where ships bring metals, texts, ideas. A place with patrons who enjoy demonstrations, with philosophers who think in circles and spheres, with artisans who can translate thought into hardware. The workshop needs bronze sheet and wire, rod and plate. It needs files and cutters, scribes and calipers. It needs apprentices who spend long days making 10 teeth look like the next 10, and masters who can design a train that lands exactly where a cycle demands. It needs time, because precision is built slowly, and it needs someone wealthy enough or curious enough to pay for all that time. The economics matter. Bronze is not cheap. Skilled hours are not cheap. If most of your culture can get by with a lunisolar calendar that works well enough by direct observation and tradition, why fund a device that encodes those rules into metal? One answer is prestige. Another is pedagogy. A device that makes the abstract tangible is a powerful teacher. Another answer is more practical. Consistency across distance if you're coordinating events across cities, sailing by dead reckoning, or proving a point in a debate about how the heavens truly move. In all those cases, a clean portable logic machine is an asset. What did it feel like to use it? Picture a tablet of wood and bronze with a face of scales and pointers. You set a knob to the year and month. You turn a handle and the pointers glide. On the back, there are spirals, tight, labeled, with tiny windows that the pointers sweep through. Someone leans over your shoulder and asks, "When will the next darkening of the sun occur?" You read the scale and say, "In the high summer, near midday, the shadow will fall more to the north." They ask how you know. You tap the letters that stand for directions and magnitudes, proud of the machine's quiet authority. If you seed the image with human context, it grows. A teacher shows a room full of students why the months slip against the seasons, unless you keep counting and insert corrections. A priest checks that a holy day will not collide with an ill-omened sky. A navigator uses the calendar to keep track of where he is in a cycle when land is out of sight, letting him synchronize crew and cargo with a schedule agreed on back home. A patron displays the device during a gathering, and things that would take hours to explain become graspable in minutes. It is not necessary to pick only one of these scenes to understand the object's utility. They can all be true in different rooms. Then the thread snaps. Knowledge breaks not because truth stops being true, but because the human systems that carry it falter. A workshop that holds the trick for cutting accurate teeth shudders when the master dies and the apprentice hasn't yet built confidence, or when a war sends the young to other trades. A library that keeps texts about cycles and ratios burns. A patron who funds demonstrations loses money or power, and the culture's priorities shift. In such times, the unusual is vulnerable. What is made rarely is maintained rarely. A device that requires uncommon skill to make and repair becomes a single point of failure. There is a temptation to make the story tragic, that this was a spark of brilliance in a dark room, snuffed out. A more nuanced view is that fragments of the technique survived in other contexts, that pockets of craft persisted, but the specific concatenation, astronomical insight, mathematical modeling, patronage, and metalworking did not align often enough to create a lineage of boxes. That is a different kind of loss. Not ignorance, but misalignment. Not darkness, but a corridor where doors did not open in sequence for long. If we ask what precisely this object was for, we can weigh three plausible narratives. 1. An elite educational instrument. A master uses the device to make abstract cycles visible to students, to compress months of sky watching into minutes of demonstration. The strength here is how well the inscriptions read like instructional labels, how naturally the dials become a lecture. The weakness is that true classrooms may have done without such luxuries most of the time. The cost is high for a tool that could be replaced by diagrams and a trained voice. 2. A navigational or chronometric demonstrator. Not a sextant, not a steering aid, but a robust calendar you can carry, immune to clouded skies, that lets you keep long-term count during voyages and synchronizes crew to a common schedule. The strength lies in the device's robustness against the weather and its emphasis on cycles. The weakness is that short-term navigation depends more on local observation and instruments that answer, "Where am I now?" while this box answers, "Where are we in the grand repeating clock?" 3. A civic or ritual calendar computer. City officials, festival organizers, and priesthoods need to plan. Aligning cycles of games and rites with lunar months and avoiding eclipses at awkward moments would be smoother with a machine that forecasts seasons of risk and ceremony. The strength is how neatly the inscriptions seem to touch both astronomical and civic rhythms. The weakness is that such bureaucracy also worked with tradition and observation. The machine might be an enhancement, not a necessity. Each narrative explains some features well and stumbles on others. That stubbornness is not discouraging. It is the grain of the wood we have to plane along, a reminder that the device was probably many things to many people. A tool changes its role depending on the hand that holds it. What stays constant is that it compresses time. It takes the long-winded speech of the sky and translates it into quiet, legible motion. There is another line of inquiry that deepens the mystery rather than solves it. Supply chains and tolerances. To cut consistent teeth, you must standardize process. That implies specialized files, a sense of what hardness you want in bronze, ovens whose temperatures are known by feel or color, techniques for marking circles and spacing teeth evenly. These are not trivial. They imply a community of practice. If you imagine the noise and smell of that workshop, you can hear the rhythm of skilled boredom, the hum of repetitive excellence that precision demands. This is where the device makes me pause, not in the sparkling insight of cycles, but in the patient infrastructure of making. And yet, for all the patience, the device is also playful. There is a joy in making the world's patterns small enough to turn with your fingers. The crank is a dare. What if you could fast forward a year? What if you could rewind a decade? What if you could watch the moon's strange gait and the sun's steady stride grind against each other and leave you a pattern you could use? In a culture that prized debate and demonstration, such a box would be irresistible. We cannot escape the pull of the first moment, the diver, the crate, the flake revealing teeth. But the more we dwell here, the more the story becomes a mirror. We project our priorities onto the device. Engineers see tolerances, Astronomers see cycles, teachers see a prop, priests see a schedule, patrons see prestige. The mechanism accepts all these projections because it is at heart a language for time, and time is the grammar every human shares. So, where does that leave us? With a chain of fragments that, when arranged with care, speak a coherent sentence. Someone wanted to grasp the sky's repeatable parts and hold them still long enough to understand them. They believed that knowledge could be packaged, carried, and taught. They were willing to invest in the slow labor that turns cleverness into reliability. They etched instructions for a future reader and trusted that the bronze might outlast them. If you tilt the device in your mind, let the light catch the scratched letters and the worn teeth. You can almost hear it tick without sound. The tick is a promise. The promise is that human beings, given a pattern and a problem, will look for a way to make the world's bigness small enough to handle. This box did not survive whole. Its manual comes to us in rags, but its existence tells us something durable. Our species is very good at building memory into matter. And even when that memory is cracked, it can still teach. Hold one last image as the story closes. A room at dusk. The device on a table, its bronze dark with age even then. A hand on the handle, turning. Pointers sweep. A student leans closer. A question hangs in the air. When will the shadow return? The teacher does not answer yet. The pointer moves past a mark. The moment appears, legible, inevitable. A meeting between calculation and the world. The answer is given, not by authority, but by mechanism, and the room is quiet in that special way that follows understanding. We live surrounded by devices that make predictions for us, so we risk missing how radical it is to compress the sky into a manageable machine. This is not a monument to mystery in the spooky sense. It is a monument to curiosity and endurance. It asks us to keep better track, to look longer, to care about aligning models with reality. It asks us, above all, to remember that knowledge can be lost if it does not braid itself to communities that will carry it on. When the diver lifted that first lump and the teeth caught the light, a sentence that had been paused for centuries resumed mid-word. We have been finishing it, piece by careful piece. We may never have the whole paragraph. That is all right. The beauty here is not in final answers, but in the clarity that grows as questions are sharpened. And so, the open door is this. If a culture once built a calendar of the sky from bronze and will, what calendars are we building now to keep from forgetting ourselves? And who will be there in 2,000 years to turn them on and understand?